The sun hadn't yet crested over the California hills when Mark Harmon pulled his weathered Ford F-150 into the CBS Studio Center lot for what would become one of his final days as Special Agent Leroy Jethro Gibbs. The truck, a 1996 model with faded paint and a persistent rattle in the chassis, looked absurdly out of place among the gleaming Teslas and luxury sedans that dotted the executive parking spaces. But Harmon had never been one for appearances. For nearly 2 decades, this battered pickup had been his chariot, carrying him between two worlds. One where he commanded the screen as television's most beloved federal agent, and another where he was simply dad, simply husband, simply a man who valued the weight of a handshake more than the flash of a premiere. Inside Stage 22, the familiar organized chaos of a television production hummed with its usual intensity. Lighting technicians adjusted angles while sound engineers tested microphones, their voices creating a symphony of preparation that Harmon had heard thousands of times before. But today felt different. There was a thickness to the air, an unspoken awareness that something fundamental was shifting. The crew moved with the muscle memory of countless episodes, yet their glances toward Harmon lingered a fraction longer than usual, as if trying to photograph him with their eyes, to preserve something they sensed was slipping away. Harmon settled into his director's chair, not the expensive leather one that had been offered to him years ago, but the standard canvas seat identical to everyone else's, and surveyed the set that had been his second home since 2003. The bullpen, with its desks arranged in precise formation, felt more real to him than some actual offices he'd visited. Every scratch on Gibbs' desk, every faded photo pinned to the bulletin board, told a story. But somewhere in the quiet morning before the cameras rolled, Mark Harmon made a decision that would reverberate through television, history, and affirm a truth he'd known all along. Some things matter more than stardom, and no amount of money can purchase back time already spent. The road that led Mark Harmon to this crossroads began not in Hollywood's glittering mansions, but in the structured discipline of a family that understood both excellence and humility. Born Thomas Mark Harmon in 1951 to Tom Harmon, the Heisman Trophy-winning football legend, and Elise Knox, a film actress and model, Mark grew up in a household where achievement was expected but arrogance was forbidden. His father, despite being one of college football's most celebrated heroes, insisted his children understand that talent was a responsibility, not an entitlement. Young Mark absorbed these lessons through observation rather than lecture. He watched his father speak with the same respect to janitors as he did to athletic directors. He saw his mother balance career ambitions with unwavering presence at family dinners. The Harmon household operated on an unspoken code: work hard, stay humble, remember what matters. These weren't empty platitudes printed on motivational posters. They were the daily architecture of how the family moved through the world. Athletically gifted himself, Harmon excelled at football and earned the starting quarterback position at UCLA, following in his father's legendary footsteps. But unlike many athletes who leveraged sports fame into entertainment careers, Harmon initially resisted Hollywood's call. After graduating with a degree in communications, he worked as a carpenter and shoe salesman, deliberately choosing manual labor over the easy path his family connections could have provided. It was his sister Kristen, married to musician Ricky Nelson at the time, who finally convinced him to try acting. Even then, Harmon approached it as craft, not celebrity, another form of honest work requiring discipline and dedication. His early television roles in shows like St. Elsewhere and Reasonable Doubts showcased not just his rugged good looks, but a quiet intensity that cameras loved. Directors noticed something rare: an actor who didn't perform for attention, but instead disappeared into characters with unself-conscious authenticity. When he landed the role of Dr. Robert Caldwell on St. Elsewhere, critics praised his ability to convey complex emotion with minimal dialogue, a skill that would become his signature. But perhaps the most defining moment of Harmon's personal life came in 1986, when he met actress Pam Dawber at a party. Dawber, fresh from her starring role in Mork and Mindy, was Hollywood royalty in her own right. but she shared Harmon's aversion to the industry's superficial excess. Their courtship unfolded quietly, almost defiantly private in an era when celebrity couples treated relationships as promotional opportunities. When they married in 1987, they made a pact. Their family would not be a product for public consumption. Their two sons, Sean and Ty, would grow up as normally as wealth and fame would allow regular schools, regular responsibilities, regular consequences. This commitment to normalcy became the North Star of Harmon's career choices. When offered flashier roles in major motion pictures, he consistently chose projects that would keep him close to home. He turned down the opportunity to become a film-leading man, a decision that baffled agents and executives who saw his potential for a list movie stardom. But Harmon understood something they didn't. He'd watched many Hollywood families fragment under the pressure of location shoots and premiere circuits. He'd seen talented people lose themselves in the machinery of fame, and he'd made a promise to Pam, to his boys, and himself that he wouldn't become another cautionary tale of success, at the expense of everything that gave success meaning. When NCIS premiered in 2003, as a spin-off of Jack, few predicted it would become a cultural phenomenon. Harmon's portrayal of Leroy Jethro Gibbs, a taciturn, principled naval criminal investigative service agent haunted by the murder of his wife and daughter, struck a chord with audiences hungry for moral clarity in uncertain times. Gibbs wasn't flashy or glib. He worked with his hands in his basement, building boats he'd eventually have to destroy to remove from the house. He communicated in economical sentences and meaningful silences. He led through example rather than speeches, and he held himself to standards higher than those he demanded of his team. The character resonated so powerfully because viewers sensed they were watching something genuine. Harmon didn't play Gibbs as a superhero or tortured anti-hero. He inhabited him as a fundamentally decent man doing difficult work while carrying private pain. The famous Gibbs slap to the back of subordinates' heads became iconic not because it was harsh, but because it came from a place of mannership, a physical manifestation of caring enough to correct Dot, as NCIS climbed the ratings to become one of television's most watched dramas. Harmon's compensation reflected his centrality to the show's success. By the series' later seasons, he was earning approximately $525,000 per episode, roughly $12 million annually for a standard season. Producers knew they had built an empire around his steady presence, and they compensated accordingly. The show had spawned multiple international franchises, and Gibbs remained the gravitational center, holding it all together. But money, Harmon had learned long ago, was just a number on a contract. Time was the currency that actually mattered, and time was the resource being depleted with each passing season, each 20-hour workday, each weekend absorbed by script revisions, each family dinner missed, each grandchild's milestone experience secondhand through fast time rather than in person. The decision to leave didn't arrive as a sudden revelation, but rather as a slow, inevitable recognition that had been building for years. Harmon's sons were now adults with children of their own. Sean, following his father's path, had become an actor, while Ty had pursued careers in screenwriting and music. Both had started families, and Harmon felt the pull of a role he'd never fully explored, grandfather. He'd been an exceptional father within the constraints of a demanding career, but grandfatherhood offered something different, a chance to be present without the divided attention that work always demanded. Friends and colleagues began noticing subtle changes in Harmon's demeanor during the show's 18th season. The man who had always arrived first and left last started watching the clock differently. Production assistant Miguel Fair, no relation to the late actor, who had been Harmon's close friend and co-star, called finding Harmon on the set one evening after shooting had wrapped, just standing alone in Gibbs' bullpen, looking at the space as if seeing it for the first time and saying goodbye simultaneously. You could tell something was shifting. Fair remembered. Mark wasn't unhappy, exactly, but there was this look in his eyes, like he was calculating what he'd given up and what he still had time to reclaim. Behind the scenes, Harmon began conversations with showrunner Stephen D. Binder and CBS executives about a graceful exit strategy. These discussions weren't contentious. Everyone understood that Harmon had earned the right to write his own ending. But the practical realities were staggering. NCIS wasn't just a television show. It was an economic ecosystem supporting hundreds of jobs and generating hundreds of millions in advertising revenue. Harmon's departure would fundamentally alter the show's DNA, and no one could predict whether it would survive the loss of its center. CBS made an aggressive offer, $20 million for a reduced schedule in season 19, essentially paying him full freight for part-time work. They'd restructure episodes around his availability, film his scenes more efficiently, give him unprecedented control over his schedule. The offer was designed to be impossible to refuse a fortune for a few months of work, allowing Harmon to transition gradually while securing his financial legacy. But Harmon saw the trap in the compromise. A reduced schedule would still be a schedule, still be an obligation, pulling him away from what he decided to prioritize. It would be a slow fade rather than a clean break, prolonging the goodbye while preventing him from fully committing to his next chapter. And fundamentally, Harmon had never been a man who did things halfway. If he was going to leave, he would leave completely, trusting that the show he'd helped build could evolve beyond him. The moment he vocalized his final decision came not in a boardroom but in a conversation with Pam in their backyard, the same backyard where they'd raised their boys, hosted countless family barbecues, and built a life deliberately shielded from Hollywood's intrusive glare. According to those close to the couple, Pam didn't push Mark toward any particular choice. She'd supported his career for decades, understanding that NCIS gave him professional fulfillment and creative satisfaction. But when he finally said the words, "I think it's time," she simply nodded, recognizing that her husband had arrived at a conclusion that had been forming for years. Pam never gave Mark an ultimatum, a family friend revealed, but she didn't have to. He knew what he was missing. He felt it every time his grandson took his first steps and Mark wasn't there to see it. Every time there was a family gathering he had to skip. He'd built this incredible career. But what was it for if he wasn't present for the people who made it meaningful? Filming Gibbs' final regular episode, though, the show cleverly left the door open for occasional returns, required Harmon to perform a delicate emotional balance. He had to give the character a satisfying conclusion while honoring the crew and cast who had become his second family. The episode, Great Wide Open, featured Gibbs in Alaska, choosing to stay behind in a remote area rather than return to NCIS headquarters, helping a young man wrongly accused of murder and, in doing so, finding a kind of peace he'd been seeking since losing his own family decades earlier. The parallels weren't lost on anyone. Gibbs was stepping away from duty to find himself again, just as Harmon was stepping away from television to reclaim parts of himself the job had necessarily absorbed. The final scene showed Gibbs working with his hands, building something in the wilderness, a visual echo of those basement boat building scenes that had always represented the character's need to create something tangible in a world of violence and moral complexity. When director Diana Valentine called cut on Harmon's final regular scene, the set fell into profound silence. No one applauded immediately. The weight of the moment demanded pause. Harmon stood still for several seconds, as if allowing 18 years to wash over him one last time. Then, characteristically, he walked directly to the crew and began shaking hands, thanking lighting technicians and camera operators by name, acknowledging the people whose work made his performances possible, but whose contributions often went uncelebrated. Mark knew everyone's name, remembered key grip and tono raise. Not just the directors and actors, but the guy who brought him coffee, the woman who adjusted his microphone. He treated everyone like they mattered because to him, they did. That last day, he made sure to find every single person and thank them personally. It took hours. He didn't care. The media reaction to Harmon's departure created the kind of frenzy his entire career had been designed to avoid. Entertainment journalists speculated about behind-the-scenes conflicts, creative differences, health concerns. The usual narratives applied to high-profile exits. But those who knew Harmon understood the truth was far simpler and far more radical. He just wanted to live differently. In an industry that measures success by visibility, box office returns, and social media followers. Harmon had always been an anomaly. He maintained no public social media presence. He rarely gave interviews, and when he did, he spoke about the work rather than himself. His contract famously included minimal promotional obligations. He'd appear at essential press events, but avoided the talk show circuit that most actors use to maintain relevance. Mark always said the work should speak for itself, recalled former co-star Polly Perrette. He didn't need to be on magazine covers or trending on Twitter. He just wanted to do good work and go home to his family. That's revolutionary in Hollywood. And it's also kind of heartbreaking that it's revolutionary that simply wanting a private life makes you an outlier. The public response, surprisingly, wasn't anger or disappointment, but admiration. Fans mourned losing Gibbs, but celebrated Harmon's choice. Social media filled with messages praising his priorities, his willingness to walk away from enormous money for intangible values. In a culture increasingly anxious about work-life balance and the cost of professional success, Harmon's decision resonated as both radical and aspirational. One viral post captured the sentiment. Mark Harmon walked away from $20 million to spend time with his grandchildren. He's not a quitter. He's the winner. He figured out what actually matters. For Harmon himself, the aftermath brought exactly what he'd sought: beautiful, unglamorous normalcy. Friends reported seeing him at his grandson's Little League games, sitting in the bleachers in a baseball cap and sunglasses, just another grandfather cheering too loudly and taking too many photos. He was spotted at Home Depot on a Tuesday afternoon, shopping for landscaping supplies. He and Pam were seen walking their dogs through their neighborhood, holding hands like newlyweds rather than a couple married for over 3 decades. These mundane moments, so ordinary as to be invisible for most people, represented victory for Harmon. He'd spent 18 years inhabiting fictional investigations, solving pretend crimes, building a character who lived in viewers' homes weekly. Now he could invest that energy into his actual life, with no cameras, no scripts, no call times pulling him away. His sons spoke publicly about their father's choice with obvious pride mixed with relief. Sean Harmon, who had appeared on NCIS in flashback scenes playing a young version of his father's character, told an interviewer, "Dad always showed up for us growing up, but it cost him. He'd be exhausted, running on no sleep, but he'd still come to my games, help with homework, have dinner with us. Now he gets to show up without that cost. He can just be present, fully present, and that's the greatest gift he could give us and his grandchildren." The entertainment industry, meanwhile, had to grapple with what Harmon's departure signified. In an era when many actors work well into their 70s and 80s driven by financial need, professional identity, or simple passion for the craft, Harmon's voluntary exit at 70 represented a different philosophy. He wasn't retiring from acting entirely. He'd indicated openness to limited NCIS appearances and carefully selected projects, but he was retiring from the grind, from the relentless schedule that television production demands, from allowing work to define the boundaries of his existence. Mark changed the conversation about success, noted entertainment analyst Patricia Weston. For decades, the narrative has been bigger, more, longer, more episodes, more seasons, more money. Mark said, "I have enough. I've done enough. Now I'm going to do something else." That's countercultural in Hollywood, and it's inspiring for anyone who's ever felt trapped by their own achievements. In the years following his departure, Harmon has remained deliberately low profile, but glimpses of his life suggest a man at peace with his choice. He's been photographed working in his wood shop like Gibbs. Harmon finds satisfaction in building things with his hands. He's attended family gatherings that, for the first time in decades, don't require him to check his phone for production updates or leave early for script readings. He's grown a beard, let his hair go a bit longer, shed the physical maintenance that television appearances demanded. Most tellingly, those who encounter him report a lightness that wasn't present during his NCIS years. The weight of carrying a billion-dollar franchise, of being responsible for so many jobs, of maintaining excellence across 400 episodes, that burden has lifted. He's still disciplined, still carries himself with the same quiet dignity. But there's an ease now, a sense of someone who stopped running a race he was winning but didn't want to finish. Mark Harmon's story ultimately transcends celebrity culture to touch something universally human, the question of what we're working for and whether our work serves our life or consumes it. In a world that constantly pushes for more and more success, more achievement, more wealth, more recognition, Harmon's choice to step back offers a different model of winning. He reminds us that courage isn't just facing danger or overcoming obstacles. Sometimes courage is saying enough, is choosing to be unknown rather than famous, is valuing presence over prestige. His legacy won't just be 400 episodes of excellent television or the indelible character of Jethro Gibbs. It will be the quiet revolution of a man who realized that all the money in Hollywood couldn't purchase an afternoon with his grandson, couldn't recreate a missed family dinner, couldn't give him back the years spent serving a fictional world instead of fully inhabiting his real one. In the end, Mark Harmon didn't sacrifice anything. He simply chose what mattered most, trading the temporary gratification of applause and paychecks for the lasting sustenance of love, connection, and time spent with people who knew him not as a character or a star, but simply as Mark's husband, father, grandfather, friend. And in making that choice publicly, in walking away from fortune to embrace what money cannot buy, he left behind something more valuable than any television show: permission for the rest of us to do the same.